I remember the day I first met Nick. I walked into this mostly white room, and his shock of dark hair was sticking up through a well-worn Corona beer visor. This was mildly inappropriate because he was only 17 years old, but the truth is people will let you wear pretty much anything you want when you've been admitted to the hospital for rehab after spinal cord injury. And he wore that thing every day for years. Nick had broken his neck four-wheeling with some friends. He had a C4 incomplete injury. So although it was quite high, he could move his arms a little, his legs some. He wanted to walk, and it wasn't out of the question. The thing is, all 17-year-old boys admitted to the hospital after spinal cord injury want to walk. Always, sometimes only, even if they're not as lucky as Nick. And so I explained to him the way I do to all my 17-year-old boys admitted for rehab after spinal cord injury, that it's my job to help balance these long-term restorative goals with more short-term compensatory strategies. I also wanted him to walk. I wanted him to walk with his pants on. I wanted him to brush his teeth. I wanted him to be able to open the door. Nick learned quickly how to bathe from a bench, how to transfer, and how to put his shirt on, but pants remained a challenge. It's a far more complicated sequence than we appreciate each morning, and he had a lot of spasticity, which made it harder. He practiced rolling, reaching back, pulling on his pants. I tried to convince him it would be easier without the visor, but no such luck. He held on to that thing, and we kept practicing. At some point, it became clear to both of us that he probably wouldn't be doing it at home, but I pushed, and he was a good sport about it. I pushed because I thought it was my job to make him independent for discharge. Nick eventually transitioned to outpatient, where he recovered some hand function, began walking in braces for exercise, and periodically we kept practicing dressing. He did all the things you're supposed to do after spinal cord injury, returning home, to school, working part-time. Then Nick went to college and did all the things you're supposed to do in college, partying, dating, studying hopefully, returning for therapy during school breaks. He continued to show recovery and eventually, in therapy, mastered putting on his pants. But each summer he would return and tell me he just wasn't doing it at home. My dear Goldilocks would say the bed was too big, too small, too hard, too soft. It took too much time. Then Nick graduated from college, finally lost the visor, and prepared to apply to law school. That summer, now 25 years old, I asked during his eval, "So, how's the dressing going?" He looked at me and said in that way that patients who've been in therapy far too long say, "Modified independent." "So you're putting your own pants on in your own bed?" I asked. He nodded proudly. "What changed?" "Well," he said, "I met a girl, and she says she won't marry me until I can do it myself." So there it was, the motivation we'd been missing all these years, the reason why it mattered, and the perspective to know you can still have a full and happy life even if you can't walk. It was in that moment that I came to appreciate that Nick had been successful because dressing was now his goal and no longer mine. I came to appreciate that being truly client-centered is so much more than FIM scores and skills checklists, and that despite my best effort, truly meaningful activities don't happen in the clinic. I thought my job was to make him independent for discharge, but I now understand my job is so much more. I am to help people understand how their bodies now work, to give them the skills they need to be successful, and to move away from a skill when they're just not ready. And so now, when I meet a 17-year-old newly admitted to the hospital after spinal cord injury, and he tells me he wants to walk, I say, "Okay, let's get started." I'll make sure along the way he learns how to put his pants on, and I know he will use those skills when he realizes there is nothing less sexy than having somebody else put your pants back on.